November 8, 1999. Location: Blackwater Creek Bridge, Iron Range, Minnesota. The fog rolled in like smoke from a dying fire, thick and metallic tasting, carrying the scent of iron ore and frozen marsh. Bus driver Margaret Maggie Hendricks squinted through the windshield, her knuckles white against the steering wheel. The defroster wheezed against glass that fogged faster than it could clear. Behind her, 19 voices rose and fell in the rhythm of after-school chatter. Kids from the scattered mining communities along Highway 53, heading home from Vermilion Elementary. She knew every face in her rearview mirror. The Morrison twins arguing over a Game Boy, little Sarah Chen practicing her spelling words aloud, Tommy Kowalski with his hockey stick propped between the seats like a knight's lance. The Blackwater Creek Bridge loomed ahead through the murk, a narrow steel span built in 1962 to replace the old timber crossing that winter ice had claimed. The creek below ran dark as coffee, stained by decades of iron runoff from the abandoned Mesabi mines. Local kids called it Bloodwater and dared each other to touch it. Maggie eased off the gas as the bus wheels hit the bridge's metal grating. The sound always made her nervous, that hollow drumming that seemed to echo up from the creek itself. But today something else caught her attention. In the fog ahead, brake lights glowed red. A vehicle sat motionless at the far end of the bridge. Dark blue, boxy shape, windows tinted black. Not a car she recognized from any of the mining families. The license plate was obscured by mud, and exhaust drifted from the tailpipe like gray breath in the cold air. Behind them, another set of headlights appeared. Maggie checked her mirrors. A white panel van keeping pace with the bus since they'd left the school. In 15 years of driving these routes, she'd learned to notice vehicles that followed too close for too long. The bus crept forward. Halfway across the bridge, the radio crackled. "Bus 47, this is dispatch." "You copy?" Maggie reached for the handset, but static swallowed her reply. The bridge's steel frame always killed the signal, a dead zone spanning 40 feet of Minnesota wilderness. The dark vehicle ahead hadn't moved. Through the fog, she could make out a figure standing beside the driver's door. Tall, wearing what looked like a maintenance uniform, he raised one hand, not a wave, but a signal. The van behind them accelerated, pulling alongside the bus. Impossible on the narrow bridge, but somehow it managed. The passenger window rolled down, revealing a man in aviator sunglasses despite the overcast sky. "Kids," Maggie called back, keeping her voice steady. "Everybody sit down and buckle up." But the words felt hollow. Something was wrong. The fog, the timing, the way both vehicles had appeared at once. It felt orchestrated. The man from the dark car was walking toward them now, his boots ringing against the metal grating. He wore a utility belt and carried something in his right hand. A clipboard maybe, or something else. Maggie's foot hovered between brake and gas. The creek rushed 30 feet below, swollen with autumn rain. Behind her, the children's voices had quieted, sensing the change in her demeanor. And then the radio burst to life with a voice that wasn't dispatch. "Bus 47, you're going to want to open that door." December 3rd, 2026. Location: Blackwater Creek Bridge, Iron Range, Minnesota. 27 years later, the fog still came to Blackwater Creek, but the bridge carried different traffic now. Logging trucks mostly, and the occasional DOT maintenance crew checking for ice damage. The old mining towns had mostly emptied out, their populations scattered to Duluth or the Twin Cities. Bridge Inspector Kyle Morrison, no relation to the Morrison twins, who'd been on Bus 47, crouched near the eastern abutment, running his flashlight beam along a hairline crack in the concrete. The crack wasn't on any of the original blueprints, which bothered him more than the structural implications. Kyle had been 7 years old when the bus vanished, too young to understand why his teacher had cried that day, why the playground went quiet when parents came to pick up their children early, but old enough to remember the search helicopters circling overhead like metal vultures. The official story was simple. Bus 47 had skidded on black ice, crashed through the guardrail, and plunged into Blackwater Creek. The current had carried the wreckage downstream to the Mesabi River, then on to Lake Superior. Recovery was impossible in the dark water and shifting ice, except they'd found the bus 3 days later, sitting upright in a farmer's field 12 miles from any creek. Engine off, doors closed, not a scratch on the yellow paint. Empty. Kyle's flashlight beam caught something unusual. The crack wasn't random. It formed a deliberate pattern like the outline of a hidden panel. He tapped the concrete with his hammer. The sound was hollow. "Find something interesting." Kyle spun around. A woman stood at the bridge's edge, badge glinting on her jacket. Sheriff's department, but he didn't recognize her. Tall, graying at the temples with the kind of steady gaze that missed nothing. "You're not Sheriff Paulson," Kyle said. "Detective Elena Santos, BCA." She gestured toward the abutment. "What's got your attention down there?" Kyle hesitated. The Bureau of Criminal Apprehension didn't usually investigate bridge maintenance. Possible structural issue. This seam doesn't match the engineering specs. Santos climbed down to his level, her boots sure on the slick concrete. "Mind if I take a look?" She produced her own flashlight, a heavy-duty model that threw a clean white beam. When the light hit the crack, Kyle heard her breath catch. "That's not a fracture," she said quietly. "That's a joint." It took them 20 minutes with a pry bar to work the panel loose. Behind it lay a narrow void, barely large enough for a person to crawl through. The air that escaped smelled of rust and something else, something organic and old. Santos played her light into the space. The beam caught on fabric, red fabric, child-sized. "Call it in," she said, "all of it." December 4th, 2026. Location, Blackwater Creek Community Center, Minnesota. The community center hadn't seen this many people since the memorial service in 2000. Folding chairs arranged in careful rows, a projector screen at the front, and the kind of tension that made the air feel thin. Detective Santos stood beside a table covered with evidence bags. Behind her, crime scene photos were pinned to a corkboard, like accusations waiting for answers. Kyle sat in the back, notebook balanced on his knee. He recognized some faces from the old newspaper photos, parents who'd aged 27 years in the span of a single autumn day. Others were siblings, now grown, carrying the weight of being the ones who came home. Patricia Morrison raised her hand without waiting to be called. Her twins, Amanda and Alex, had been 8 years old when Bus 47 vanished. Now she was 53, her hair silver, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Are you telling us they were under that bridge the whole time?" Santos kept her tone clinical. "We've recovered personal items consistent with those reported missing in 1999. Clothes, backpacks, a lunchbox with Sarah Chen written in marker." "But no," Patricia's voice cracked. "No remains." "No human remains," Santos confirmed. "The items appear to have been placed there deliberately, possibly years after the initial incident." David Kowalski stood up in the middle section. Tommy's father, once a broad-shouldered man who'd worked the mines, now bent with arthritis and grief. "Then what happened to our children?" Santos clicked to the next slide. The image showed the interior of the hidden chamber, a child's jacket hanging from a nail, a row of small shoes lined against the wall, and something else, a laminated map of school bus routes with Route 47 circled in red. "This wasn't an accident," she said. "Someone planned this, someone who knew the route, knew the bridge, knew exactly how to make 19 children disappear. The room erupted in voices, questions, accusations, demands for answers that had been 27 years in the making. Santos raised her hand for quiet. "There's something else," she said. "Yesterday we received a call. The voice was electronically distorted, untraceable. They said, and I quote, 'Check the mine. Shaft 7, before the water rises.'" December 5th, 2026. Location: abandoned Mesabi iron mine, Minnesota. The entrance to Shaft 7 was little more than a rusted grate set into a hillside overgrown with sumac and birch. The Mesabi Mining Company had sealed it in 1987, but someone had cut through the metal bars with a torch. Recent work, judging by the clean edges and lack of rust. Santos led the team in, herself, Kyle, whose engineering background made him useful, and 2 deputies with enough spelunking experience to navigate underground passages. Their headlamps carved tunnels of light through absolute darkness. The main shaft descended at a steep angle, reinforced with timber that groaned under the weight of decades. Water dripped constantly, and the air tasted of iron and decay. After 50 yards, the passage opened into a chamber that had never appeared on any mining survey. "Jesus," Deputy Martinez whispered. The chamber was enormous, carved from the living rock, with precision that spoke of months or years of work. Generator-powered work lights had been strung along the walls, though they were dark now. Tables and chairs were arranged in neat rows like a classroom. At the far end, a large map of northern Minnesota was mounted on an easel, marked with red pins. Each pin corresponded to a missing child case, not just Bus 47, but dozens of disappearances spanning 3 decades. Some Kyle recognized from news reports. Others were names he'd never heard. Santos approached the map slowly. "This isn't random," she said. "Look at the pattern." The pins formed rough circles around mining towns, logging camps, and other isolated communities. Places where children might vanish without immediate notice. Places where the local authorities might lack resources for extensive searches. On the table nearest the map lay a stack of file folders. Santos opened the top one. Inside were photographs, school records, family information, a complete dossier on Amanda and Alex Morrison. Their school pictures smiled up from the page, 8 years old forever. The second folder contained similar information about Sarah Chen. The third, Tommy Kowalski. All 19 children from Bus 47 had files, along with dozens of others. "Deputy," Santos called. "Bag everything, every file, every photograph, every scrap of paper." But Kyle was staring at something else. In the corner of the chamber, barely visible in the overlapping pools of their flashlight beams, stood a door. Heavy steel, institutional-looking, with a small window at eye level. The door was unlocked. Beyond it lay a corridor lined with smaller chambers, each one fitted with a cot, a small table, and a bucket. The walls were covered with children's drawings, stick figures under crayon suns, houses with crooked chimneys, animals that might have been dogs or horses. At the end of the corridor was one final door, this one sealed with a heavy padlock. Santos shot it off with her service weapon, the sound echoing through the mine like thunder. Inside the final chamber, they found her. A young woman, maybe 25, sitting on a narrow bed with her knees drawn up to her chest. She was clean, well-fed, wearing clothes that looked new. When their lights found her face, she didn't flinch or cry out. She simply looked at them with the kind of calm that comes from having waited a very long time. "Sarah?" Santos said quietly. "Sarah Chen." The woman nodded. "Are you here to take me home?" December 8th, 2026. Location: BCA Field Office, Bemidji, Minnesota. Sarah Chen sat across from Santos in the interview room, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. She'd been in the hospital for 2 days. Physical evaluation, psychological assessment, careful reintegration to a world that had moved on without her. Physically, she was healthy. No signs of abuse, malnutrition, or extended captivity. Psychologically, she was a puzzle. 27 years had passed, but she seemed to have aged only 15 or 16. Her memories were detailed but disjointed, as if someone had shuffled the deck of her experiences. "Tell me about the day the bus stopped," Santos said. Sarah's eyes focused on something beyond the window. The fog was thick. Mrs. Hendricks was nervous. I could tell by how she gripped the wheel. There were cars waiting for us. Cars, plural. A dark one at the end of the bridge, a white van behind us. When we stopped, a man came to the door. He was wearing a uniform, like a mechanic or something. He said there was a gas leak and we needed to get off the bus. Santos made notes. What did Mrs. Hendricks do? She tried to radio for help, but the radio wasn't working. The man said he was from the county, that there were backup buses coming. He seemed official. Mrs. Hendricks believed him. What happened when you got off the bus? Sarah's hands tightened around the coffee cup. They gave us masks like the kind doctors wear, said it was for the gas. The masks smelled sweet, like cherries. I remember feeling sleepy. How many men were there? 3, maybe 4. It's hard to remember. The masks made everything fuzzy. Sarah paused. When I woke up, I was in the mine. Santos leaned forward. You were in the mine for 27 years? Not the whole time. He moved us sometimes, different places, but always underground, always dark. Sarah's voice remained steady, matter of fact. He said the world above was dangerous, that our families had been killed in the gas leak, that he was protecting us. Who was he? Mr. Carlson. That's what he told us to call him. He was kind, mostly. He taught us things, reading, math, history. He said we were special, that we'd been chosen. Santos felt her stomach turn. Were there other children with you? Sarah nodded. At first, all of us from the bus, but as we got older, she trailed off, staring at her hands. Some of them left. Mr. Carlson said they were ready for the outside world, that they'd gone to live with new families. But you stayed. I wasn't ready, Sarah said simply. I was afraid. The world up here seemed so big, so bright. Down there, everything made sense. Santos studied the young woman's face, looking for deception or trauma indicators, but Sarah's expression remained calm, almost serene. It was deeply unsettling. Sarah, what changed? Why are you here now? For the first time, Sarah's composure cracked slightly. Mr. Carlson got sick, really sick. He said it was time for me to leave, to find my way back. He gave me directions to the mine entrance and told me to wait for someone to find me. Where is Mr. Carlson now? Sarah's eyes met Santos's directly. He said he was going home. December 10th, 2026. Location, Records Division, St. Louis County. Kyle found the name buried in employment records dating back to 1995. Dale William Carlson, hired as a maintenance supervisor for the county's Rural Transportation Division, responsible for bridge inspections, road repairs, and, crucially, school bus route management. The photograph in his personnel file showed a man in his 40s, average height, thinning brown hair, and the kind of unremarkable face that people forgot 5 minutes after meeting. But his eyes were different, intense, focused, the kind of gaze that seemed to catalog everything it touched. Carlson's work history was spotless. No complaints, no missed days, no red flags of any kind. He'd retired in 2020 with full benefits and a commendation for 25 years of dedicated service. His last known address was a rural property 15 miles north of Blackwater Creek. Santos and Kyle drove out together, following a gravel road that wound through second-growth forest and abandoned logging clear-cuts. The house was a modest ranch, well-maintained but eerily quiet. No car in the driveway, no lights in the windows. The mailbox was stuffed with weeks' worth of uncollected mail. Santos tried the front door, locked, but the lock was standard residential grade. She had it open in 30 seconds. Inside, the house was clean to the point of obsession. No dust, no clutter, no personal touches that might indicate who had lived here. The walls were bare except for a series of maps: northern Minnesota, the Iron Range, detailed topographical surveys showing every mine, every creek, every isolated road. The basement was where they found his workshop. Tables lined with hand tools, electronic equipment, and dozens of small devices that Kyle recognized as radio jammers. In the corner sat a police scanner, its display cycling through emergency frequencies. On the wall above it hung a collection of uniforms: county maintenance, sheriff's deputy, EMT, utility worker, but it was the filing cabinet that made Santos's blood run cold. Drawer after drawer of files, each one documenting a missing child, not just from Minnesota, but from Wisconsin, North Dakota, Michigan. Hundreds of cases spanning 40 years. Photographs, family information, school records, detailed plans for abduction. At the bottom of the last drawer was a leather-bound journal. Santos opened it to the first page. The Shepherd Project, a study in human development under controlled conditions. Subject acquisition began in 1987 with the Collins boy from Thunder Bay. Initial experiments proved the viability of long-term isolation and re-education. Subjects respond well to consistent authority figures and controlled environments. Memory modification through pharmaceutical intervention shows promise. The Bus Project, Phase 7, represents the largest single acquisition to date. 19 subjects ages 6 to 14 removed from standard socialization and placed in controlled development environments. Long-term goal: creation of compliant adult subjects with minimal connection to previous life experiences. The journal contained detailed entries for each child taken from Bus 47, ages, personalities, responses to various treatments, and eventual dispositions. Most entries ended with a single notation: released to secondary facilities too. But not all of them. Some entries ended with subject proved unsuitable for development. Termination authorized. Santos counted the entries. Of the 19 children taken from Bus 47, only 7 had been marked for release. 5 were marked as terminated, and 7 were listed as development ongoing. If Sarah Chen was one of the 7, that meant 6 others might still be alive. 6 adults who'd spent their entire lives underground, convinced that the world above was dangerous, that Dale Carlson was their protector. Santos called for backup, for search teams, for every resource the BCA could mobilize. But she had the sinking feeling they were already too late. In the journal's final entry, dated just 3 days earlier, Carlson had written, "Primary facility compromised. Initiating Protocol 7, complete dispersal of remaining subjects. The work will continue elsewhere." December 15, 2026. Location: underground facility. Location unknown. Marcus didn't remember his last name anymore. Mr. Carlson said old names were like old clothes. You outgrew them eventually. Down here in the quiet place, names were different. Marcus was Learner 7. His sister was Learner 11. He thought he'd had a sister once, up in the bright world. But the memories were fuzzy, like trying to remember a dream after waking up. Mr. Carlson said that was normal. The bright world left marks on people's minds, and it took time for those marks to fade. The facility was deeper than the old place, carved into bedrock that never saw sunlight. 47 chambers connected by tunnels that Marcus could navigate in complete darkness. 23 other learners lived here now, all of them rescued from the bright world at different times. Some remembered more than others. Learner 3 still sometimes cried at night, calling out names that meant nothing, but she was getting better. Mr. Carlson was patient with the ones who took longer to adjust. This morning, though, Mr. Carlson was different. Urgent, almost frantic as he moved through the chambers, gathering supplies, packing equipment into metal cases. "The bright world people have found the old place," he told them during morning assembly. "They're looking for you, but they don't understand. They think I took you from something good, but you remember what it was like up there, the noise, the confusion, the violence." Marcus nodded along with the others. He didn't actually remember much about the bright world, but Mr. Carlson's voice was soothing, authoritative. When Mr. Carlson spoke, the words became true. "We have to move again," Mr. Carlson continued, "to the deep place. It's farther down, quieter, safer, but the journey is difficult. Not everyone will be able to make it." Learner 3 raised her hand. "What happens to the ones who can't make the journey?" Mr. Carlson's smile was gentle, paternal. "They find peace, child. Perfect, eternal peace." That afternoon, they began the selection process. Mr. Carlson examined each learner individually, checking their health, their conditioning, their loyalty. Marcus watched from the corner as learner 15, a boy who'd always been weak, always asking questions, was led to a separate chamber and didn't come back. When it was Marcus's turn, he stood straight and answered every question correctly. Yes, he remembered the bright world was dangerous. Yes, he was grateful to Mr. Carlson for saving him. Yes, he understood that the people looking for them meant harm. Mr. Carlson placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're strong, Marcus. You'll make the journey." 17 learners were selected for the move. 7 were led to the peace chamber and didn't return. Mr. Carlson said they were lucky. They'd found their rest without having to face the bright world's violence. The journey began at midnight. They followed Mr. Carlson through passages Marcus had never seen, deeper into the earth than he'd thought possible. The air grew thin and cold, and the only sound was their footsteps echoing off stone walls. After hours of walking, they reached a vast underground chamber. Water pooled at the bottom, black and still. Mr. Carlson led them to a metal door set into the far wall. "Beyond this door is the deep place," he said. "Deeper than anyone from the bright world will ever find. You'll be safe there forever." But as Mr. Carlson opened the door, Marcus caught a glimpse of what lay beyond. Not chambers or tunnels, but water. Deep, dark water that disappeared into absolute blackness. And he remembered something, a flash of memory from before, from the bright world. A yellow school bus, a bridge, fog rolling across dark water. His real name was Marcus Morrison. He'd had a twin sister named Amanda. They'd been on their way home from school when... "Mr. Carlson," he said quietly, "I remember." The older man turned, and for the first time, Marcus saw something different in his eyes. Not kindness, not protection. Something cold and calculating. "I know you do," Mr. Carlson said. "That's why you have to go first." The push was gentle but firm. Marcus fell into the black water without a sound. The cold hit him like a physical blow, driving the air from his lungs. He tried to swim, but his limbs felt heavy, unresponsive. As the water closed over his head, he heard Mr. Carlson's voice, calm and matter-of-fact. "Who's next?" But above the water, something else was happening. Lights were moving in the tunnels behind them, voices calling out commands. The bright world people had found them after all. And somewhere in the darkness, Marcus Morrison fought his way back to the surface. December 16, 2026. Location: BCA Field Office, Bemidji, Minnesota. The young man, wrapped in emergency blankets, couldn't stop shivering, not from cold. The medical team had already treated him for hypothermia and exhaustion. This was deeper, the kind of trembling that came from having your entire world restructured in the span of a few hours. "Your name is Marcus Morrison," Santos said gently. "You have a sister named Amanda. Your parents are David and Patricia Morrison. They've been looking for you for 27 years. Marcus, he was still getting used to thinking of himself by that name, stared at the photograph Santos had placed on the table. It showed two 8-year-old children, identical twins with gap-toothed smiles and mischievous eyes. "I remember some things," he said quietly, "but they feel like stories someone told me, not things I lived." Santos made notes. "That's normal after prolonged isolation and conditioning. The memories will come back gradually." "What about the others? The ones who were with me?" Santos's expression tightened. "We found 3 survivors in the water chamber. 2 didn't make it." She paused. "We're still searching for additional facilities." "He had maps," Marcus said suddenly. "Mr. Carlson, he showed us sometimes. Said there were other deep places, other groups of learners." "Where?" Marcus closed his eyes, trying to pull details from the carefully suppressed memories. "Michigan, Wisconsin, somewhere in Canada. He said the work was bigger than just us." Santos leaned forward. "Marcus, this is important. Did Mr. Carlson ever mention other people? Adults who worked with him?" "There was a woman sometimes. Dr. Helen, he called her. She gave us tests, checked our health. And a man with a scar on his face, Mr. Joseph. He brought supplies, new learners sometimes." Santos exchanged glances with Kyle, who was taking notes in the corner. A network, not just one disturbed individual, but an organized operation spanning multiple states. "One more question," Santos said. "Where is Mr. Carlson now?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "In the deep place. When the lights came, when you found us, he said the work was finished. He walked into the water and didn't come back up." January 10th, 2027. Location: Morrison Family Home, Iron Range, Minnesota. The house looked exactly as Marcus remembered, though everything seemed smaller now. The kitchen table where he'd eaten breakfast 27 years ago. The living room where he and Amanda had built pillow forts. The bedroom they'd shared, now converted to a home office. Patricia Morrison stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. She'd aged, of course, but her eyes were the same. Kind, worried, loving. "Amanda?" Marcus asked. His mother's face crumpled. "She didn't make it, sweetheart. We found her in one of the chambers, but—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Marcus nodded. He'd already known, somehow. The way Santos had looked when she told him they'd found his sister. The careful phrasing, the gentle tone. Amanda had been one of the ones marked as unsuitable for development. "I'm sorry," he said, and meant it. Not just for Amanda, but for the 27 years his parents had lost. For the boy who'd gotten on bus 47 and never come home. For the man he was now, carrying memories of both the bright world and the deep places. "You don't have anything to be sorry for," Patricia said. "You survived. You came home." But Marcus wasn't sure if that was true. He was here, physically, but the person who'd lived in this room, who'd shared jokes with Amanda, who'd complained about homework and chores, that boy was gone. In his place was someone else. Someone who'd learned to find safety in darkness and obedience. The investigation was ongoing. 5 more facilities had been discovered across 3 states, yielding 8 additional survivors and evidence of dozens more victims. The network Dale Carlson had called the Shepherd Project turned out to be vast, well-funded, and still operational in some regions. Sarah Chen was doing well, all things considered. She'd started college, was seeing a therapist, was slowly rebuilding connections to the world above ground. She'd sent Marcus a letter, thanking him for helping her remember that their real names mattered. Marcus still had nightmares sometimes, dreams of water closing over his head, of Mr. Carlson's gentle voice explaining why some children had to find peace. But he also had new dreams, memories of the bright world returning in fragments. Christmas mornings, snow days, the sound of his mother's laughter. It would take time, maybe years, but he was learning to live in the light again. And sometimes when the fog rolled across Blackwater Creek, he thought he could hear them, the voices of the ones who didn't make it home, not crying or calling for help, but singing. The songs Mr. Carlson had taught them in the deep places, before they learned what those songs really meant. The bridge still stood, its steel frame weathered but strong. The chamber beneath it had been sealed with fresh concrete, but on quiet mornings when the mist rose from the creek like the breath of sleeping giants, local residents reported hearing something that shouldn't have been possible. The sound of children playing, echoing from somewhere far below. Based on recovered files from the Shepherd Project investigation, 47 children remain unaccounted for across 6 states. The search continues. If you have information about Dale William Carlson, Dr. Helen Vasquez, or Joseph Scarface McKenna, please contact the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension tip line. Some secrets surface, others sink deeper. The water remembers everything.